Alright, to get this tie rod to let go of the knuckle, obviously that tapered section is wedged in there to the knuckle and it's been in there for eternity. I know from having done the other side already that it's probably going to require some heat. So I'm going to begin with heat. This is not a big deal for me because I'm going to be replacing all the steering linkage anyway. Obviously, if you put this much heat on tie rod ends that you were planning to keep and reuse, that would not be a good idea. Alright, what I had to do on the other side was use the pickle fork, so I'm going to try that as well. Alright, we'll finish taking down our steering linkage. Like I said, we've already got it disconnected from both of the steering knuckles. Leave it as an assembly because we'll use that to match up the correct length needed. When we put all the new stuff back together, that will get our alignment at least pretty close. We'll disconnect the tie rod end that's here at the pitman arm. There we go. Enough pounding with the pickle fork, and that got that to break loose. I've still got a few threads engaged on the nut because I need to take out the steering stabilizer. Okay, at this point we're ready to start installing some of our steering components. So this is the drag link assembly. You'll have to assemble this. You got the adjusting sleeve and the pitman arm tie rod end that will go here. This is all pretty straightforward. If you're matching up parts, these are the only SAS threads that fit together. With this in place, you can adjust the adjusting sleeve. You can turn it one way or the other, which will lengthen or shorten this drag link assembly. Take a measurement off of your original drag link, and that should get you a measurement that's close, and we can make some final adjustments once we have it all back together, but that should get you pretty close on this setting. The torque spec for the pitman arm is 65 foot-pounds, and then the torque spec here at the knuckle is 55. And then next we're going to move on to the tie rod assembly, which will go across here. As you're assembling this unit, make sure you get, there's a passenger side and a driver side tie rod end, and they're threaded differently. One is reverse thread, so that as you twist this bar, again, it functions like this adjusting sleeve. It will either shorten or lengthen this assembly. So we'll get this installed next and keep making progress. Okay, so all of our steering linkage is assembled. Our adjusting sleeves are still loose as we need to make some final adjustments to get the alignment correct. As a reminder, torque spec at the pitman arm is 65 foot-pounds. The other tie rod ends, both here at the drag link, at the knuckle, and on this knuckle, these are each 55 foot-pounds. These units are greasable, so make sure you put in your grease fittings and pump in some grease. And make sure you set your cotter pins as well. The only thing I don't care for, the grease fitting on the passenger side is on the bottom of that tie rod end. On this side, it's on the inside of the tie rod, or tie rod end, which makes it near impossible to get a grease fitting in there or a grease gun to it. I was able to get it actually by coming through the bottom part of this knuckle with the steering all the way turned to one side, and I could get an angle on it, but it's a bit tricky. And then also the steering full lock to the driver's side, that fitting is right at touching the backing plate. I don't think it's going to cause a problem because the steering's on the stops at that point, at least on mine. For installing the steering stabilizer, this end, they give you a new nut and bolt. That's pretty straightforward. This end, again, not too complicated. This side of the bolt is a stud, so it's tapered to go through the drag link, and they give you a cotter nut, a castle nut, and a cotter pin. I still need to put that in. Torque spec on this is 55 foot-pounds. Same thing on the nut over here. And then you've got the bushing on the end of the steering stabilizer. There's a washer that goes on both sides. Make sure you don't forget that. And then there's a nylock lock nut for the top as well. I'll add one more tip for this bushing in. Sometimes these rubber bushings can be difficult to get to slide onto the stud. You can use some petroleum jelly, Vaseline or something of the sort. Wipe a little bit on the inside of the bushing, and that will help it go onto the stud just a little bit easier, so that's not fighting you. And then I would recommend running the steering to the stops, both left and right, to make sure nothing binds, nothing's out of adjustment or something crazy like that. Okay, with all this new steering linkage and new track bar, we need to make some adjustments to get everything centered and pointed straight again. I started with the track bar. So with the vehicle at ride height, obviously right now it's up on the lift, but with the weight of the vehicle on the front end, so it's at ride height, go ahead and torque the track bar bolt here at the frame and here at the axle to 55 foot-pounds. Then adjustment is made there from the adjusting sleeve. With that loose, you can just twist the adjusting sleeve one way or the other to lengthen or shorten the track bar, which will move the axle side to side under the frame of the vehicle. I picked an arbitrary spot from the axle to the frame. So obviously its suspension is drooped at the moment, but at normal ride height, I can measure. I just picked from the grease fitting here on the ball joint to a spot on the frame, and I measured that distance on both sides of the vehicle and adjusted the track bar until that was even. And then I tightened up the adjusting sleeve, and the torque spec on those bolts is 35 foot-pounds, I do believe. Dorman gives you a nice sheet here. Track bar, adjusting sleeve, yeah, 35 foot-pounds. That will also be your torque spec here for the drag link as well. But anyway, at this point, we got the axle centered under the vehicle. Now for me, since I had already set the length of this drag link based on the one that I took out, and I hadn't changed the ride height of the vehicle at the moment, this got me really close to having the steering wheel centered. But if you needed to make adjustment, once you've got the axle centered on under the vehicle and the rotors or wheels pointed straight, you can make an adjustment here to lengthen or shorten that, and that will help you get your steering wheel centered. And then I tightened these down. So now once I've got the steering wheel centered and the axle centered under the vehicle, we just need to make sure our toe setting is at least close. So I had already taken a measurement from my stock tie rod adjusting sleeve from here to here, and so that got me very close. But I also took a measurement, now that it's on the vehicle, from the outside of the rotor to the outside of the rotor on the front side of the rotor, and also from behind, since I've got the tires and wheels off, on the back side of the rotor there to the back side of the rotor over here. And that just gives me a rough estimate. As you see the distance difference and that length difference, that'll tell you how towed in or towed out the vehicle is. And so I adjusted that to, they were very close, but with just a very small amount of tow in to make sure the vehicle tracks straight. Like I said, I will get this professionally aligned once I get the lift on, but this should get it close enough that it's drivable without any funky handling or destroying the tires in the first few miles. You also need to make sure you tighten the adjusting sleeves here. Torque spec on this one is 20 foot-pounds, a little M8 bolt, so don't go nuts on that or you could possibly damage it. At this point, everything should be tight and roughly pointed straight and centered under the vehicle. So you're ready to put the tires and wheels back on and go for a ride.